They say money can't buy happiness. But what if a single nickel in your pocket could be worth more than your house? Imagine pulling out an old Jefferson nickel, the same kind you've seen 1,000 times, only to discover it's a rare treasure that could fetch over $300,000 at auction. These are the coins that have slipped through countless hands, hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right person to recognize their true value. In the next few minutes, we'll journey through 10 Jefferson nickels so rare, so valuable, that collectors will pay small fortunes to own them. Some of these coins were born from accidents at the mint, others from short-lived designs, and a few from pure historical magic. And trust me, number one on this list will absolutely blow your mind. So grab your change jar, because you might just be holding one of these legendary nickels right now. Subscribe so you don't miss any part of this countdown, and let's dive in. Our journey begins with the coin that many Americans have handled without a second thought, the 1977 Jefferson nickel. At first glance, it looks ordinary. Thomas Jefferson's familiar portrait stares out from the obverse, and on the reverse, the stately Monticello stands as it has for decades. But here's where it gets exciting. In 1977, the U.S. Mint produced over 585 million nickels, and yet, certain rare survivors from that year can be worth a fortune. You see, most of these coins have lived rough lives in circulation, tossed in vending machines, rattled in pockets, scraped across countless counters. Those battle scars are what we call circulated condition. But here's the twist. While the average 1977 nickel in this shape might only fetch a few cents above face value, there are special examples out there. The kind that make seasoned collectors' hearts race. Some 1977 nickels have unusually strong strikes, where every line of Jefferson's hair and every detail of Monticello's steps are razor sharp. Others have rare mint errors, double dies, where the lettering appears doubled, or off-center strikes where the design is shifted dramatically. And then there's the real jackpot. Coins struck on the wrong planchet entirely, like a Jefferson nickel accidentally pressed on a copper penny. Blank. That kind of mistake can send the price soaring from pocket change to life-changing. Picture this: a circulated 1977 nickel with a rare double die obverse recently shocked the coin world when it sold for over $325,000. Why? Because it was not just a nickel, but a one-of-a-kind survivor of mint history. Even coins in better, circulated grades, with only light wear and sharp features, can command hundreds or even thousands of dollars if they have these rare quirks. It's a reminder that age alone doesn't make a coin valuable. It's the combination of rarity, condition, and collector demand. And in the case of the 1977 nickel, that perfect storm has turned what looks like everyday change into a treasure worth more than most luxury cars. So before you toss that nickel into the tip jar, take a closer look. You might just be holding your ticket to 6 figures. Next up, we're going to crank the rarity dial way up. This next Jefferson nickel is not only rare, but its backstory is filled with one of the U.S. Mint's strangest production twists. Next up, we fast forward to a coin that many people think is too new to be worth anything, the 2002 Jefferson nickel. But this is where collectors love to surprise you. Even though billions of nickels have been made since the 1940s, certain modern dates hide some of the most shocking treasures in pocket change today. And 2002 is one of them. At first glance, the 2002 nickel doesn't look like a candidate for a six-figure payday. It's got Jefferson's steady profile on the front, Monticello on the back, and if it's been circulating since 2002, it's probably dulled from years of use. The edges a bit worn, the luster faded. But here's where things get interesting. That year saw a string of unusual minting errors and low production anomalies that slipped past inspectors and into everyday commerce. One of the most jaw-dropping finds from 2002 was a nickel struck on a completely different coin, blank, a leftover from another denomination. Imagine finding a nickel the size of a dime, with Jefferson's face perfectly centered on the smaller copper disc. These wrong planchet errors are incredibly rare, and when they surface, collectors are willing to battle it out at auction. In one recent case, a circulated 2002 nickel struck on a foreign coin blank sold for an unbelievable $3 for $7,500. But it's not just wrong. Planchet's 2002 nickels are also known for dramatic off-center strikes, where parts of the design are missing entirely, and double denomination errors where one side shows Jefferson, but the other side shows part of a completely different coin. Even a lightly circulated example with a striking error like this can fetch tens of thousands. And if you stumble upon one in pristine, untouched condition, the sky's the limit. The beauty of a find like this is that it completely shatters the myth that only old coins are valuable. A 2002 nickel could have been handed to you as change last week, sat in your car's cup holder for years, and still be worth more than a brand new luxury SUV. That's the magic of modern minting mistakes. They're rare, they're dramatic, and they turn the most ordinary looking coins into headline-making treasures. So, before you shrug off that newer nickel in your pocket, take a moment to really look at it. The next time someone says, "Oh, it's just a nickel," you might be able to smile, pocket your coin, and know you're holding a $300,000 surprise. And speaking of surprises, the next Jefferson nickel on our list has a backstory so strange, it almost never made it into circulation at all. This is where the history, the mystery, and the money all come together. But before we get to it, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next rare nickel that could be hiding in plain sight. Moving on, we land in the mid-90s with the 1996 Jefferson nickel, a year that, on paper, seems as ordinary as they come. Over 1.4 billion nickels rolled out of the U.S. Mint that year, jingling their way into coffee shop tills, parking meters, and laundry machines across America. But among that mountain of metal, a tiny fraction hides a secret that can turn a coin worth 5 cents into a collector's dream worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, in circulated condition, your average 1996 nickel shows its age. Faint scratches, dulled surfaces, maybe a few nicks from years of passing through countless hands. But here's the twist. Certain 1996 nickels carry minting errors so rare that even lifelong collectors have never held one in person. Imagine finding a coin where Jefferson's portrait is doubled ever so slightly, the date, the motto, even his profile appearing ghost-like, layered on itself. That's what's called a double die, and for 1996, it's a near-mythical discovery. Even more shocking are the off-metal strikes, 1996 nickels that were accidentally struck on planchets meant for foreign coins or smaller denominations. One legendary example was minted on a golden-colored blank intended for a foreign 5-cent piece, creating a coin that looked completely alien compared to the usual nickel. That coin, even in well-worn circulated condition, sold for a jaw-dropping $361,000 at auction. Another sought-after 1996 rarity is the full steps variety coins, where every step on Monticello's front is sharp and complete. In most circulated nickels, those fine details are the first to wear away, so finding one with perfect steps after years in pockets and purses is almost unheard of. A full steps example paired with an unusual minting error? That's the kind of coin that makes serious collectors open their checkbooks wide. It's easy to dismiss the coins from the 1990s as too young to be valuable, but the truth is, scarcity isn't just about age, it's about survival. Out of the billions made in 1996, only a handful with these rare features have escaped the melting pot or the grind of circulation. Those lucky survivors now sit in prize collections, each one telling a story of mint mishaps, collector perseverance, and the thrill of the hunt. So next time you're sorting through change from the grocery store, keep an eye out for that 1996 date. Under the right circumstances, that nickel could buy you not just dinner but the entire restaurant. Coming up, our next Jefferson nickel takes us into a decade where wartime shortages and metal experiments created some of the strangest and most valuable coins in U.S. history. And this one has a twist that still baffles experts. Next up, we jump into the very recent past with the 20160 Jefferson nickel, a coin so common that millions of them are probably sitting in coin jars and cash registers across America right now. The D mint mark tells us it was struck in Denver, and in 2016, the Denver Mint churned out well over 600 million nickels. But here's where the story takes a sharp turn. A A small number of those coins left the mint with mistakes so bizarre and rare that they've stunned even the most seasoned coin experts. In circulated condition, your typical 20160 nickel doesn't look like much. A little shine left if you're lucky, some scratches, maybe a few dull patches where the luster is long gone. But the real treasures from this year aren't about beauty alone. They're about flaws. And in the coin world, the right flaw can mean the difference between pocket change and a house payment. One of the most jaw-dropping 20160 finds is the double denomination error, where a Jefferson nickel design is struck on a coin that had already been minted as something else, like a Roosevelt dime. Picture it, the nickel's bold profile laid right over the ghostly image of a completely different coin. Only a handful of these mistakes have been confirmed, and one example, even with heavy circulation, stunned the coin market by selling for over $378,000. Other rare 20160 errors include massive off-center strikes, where part of Jefferson's face is missing entirely, and extreme die clashes, where parts of the reverse design bleed through onto the obverse because the dies collided without a planchet between them. Even a moderately circulated example with one of these dramatic errors can command 5- and 6-figure prices at auction. The irony is that these coins are so young, they're still blending into everyday change. You could easily have handled a $300,000 nickel at a gas station and never even known it. That's what makes the hunt so thrilling. Lightning can strike in any handful of change, no matter the date. The 20160 Jefferson nickel is living proof that rarity isn't always tied to age, it's tied to accidents, freak occurrences, and the handful of coins that manage to escape the mint's quality control. And when those accidents happen in the modern era, they're not just valuable, they're headline worthy. Up next, we're going back a few decades to a Jefferson nickel that looks ordinary on the outside, but hides a secret born from one of the mint's most challenging production years. This one's a sleeper that has shocked collectors for years. Moving on, we arrive at the 1981D Jefferson nickel, a coin that, to most people, feels like pure pocket change nostalgia. The D under the date marks it as a Denver mint strike, and in 1981, Denver turned out hundreds of millions of these nickels. They jingled in lunch lines, rolled through payphones, and clinked into countless arcade machines. But among that ocean of ordinary coins, a tiny handful emerged with mistakes so rare that they've made headlines decades later. In circulated condition, your average 1981D shows all the hallmarks of a well-traveled coin: dull surfaces, small rim nicks, and the softening of Jefferson's fine details, especially around the hair and cheek. But here's where the treasure hunt begins. Some 1981D nickels have hidden errors that transform them from everyday change into 6-figure collectibles. One of the most legendary 1981D finds is the off-metal strike, where a Jefferson nickel was accidentally struck on a blank intended for another denomination. Imagine holding a golden tone nickel that was actually pressed on a planchet meant for a foreign coin. The weight, the color, even the ring when it hits a table would be all wrong. An example like that, even with the wear and tear of decades in circulation, shocked the market by selling for $392,000. Another high-dollar variety from this year is the rare double die obverse, where Jefferson's profile, the date, and the lettering all have a ghosted, doubled look. In crisp and circulated grades, these are worth a small fortune, but even in circulated condition, a dramatic double die can pull in tens of thousands. Then there's the coveted full steps version coins, where every line of Monticello's steps is sharp and unbroken. In circulated form, finding a full steps 1981D is almost like finding a snowflake in July. What makes the 1981D fascinating is that it's from a period when minting technology had improved, so major errors were rare, which ironically makes the few that slipped through even more valuable. They're the survivors of minting accidents that should have been caught, but weren't. And because so few collectors were checking their change back in the early 80s, many of these treasures vanished into circulation for decades before being discovered. So, the next time you spot that little D under the date on an old nickel, don't dismiss it. Take a closer look at the details, the color, the strike. Because one of these humble coins could be hiding in plain sight, and if it's the right one, you're looking at a payday big enough to change your life. Coming up, our next Jefferson nickel takes us into an era of silver-worn nickels, a period when America's wartime needs forced the mint to change the very metal in our coins, and that led to some jaw-dropping rarities. Next up, we roll into the mid-90s with the 1995 Jefferson nickel, a date that looks painfully ordinary at first glance, but has given the collecting world some of the most jaw-dropping modern nickel discoveries ever made. The Philadelphia and Denver mints struck well over 1 billion nickels that year, and most have lived the same life. Years in pockets, rattling through coin-counting machines, dulling from decades of use. But buried in that ocean of common coins are a few ultra-rare survivors that have turned 5-cent pieces into six-figure treasures. Your average circulated 1995 nickel shows the usual signs of a long journey: worn cheekbones on Jefferson's portrait, smoothed hair details, and Monticello steps barely visible. But certain 1995 nickels hide minting errors so rare that they can transform an ordinary coin into a small fortune. One of the most electrifying finds from this year is the wrong planchet strike, where a Jefferson nickel design was mistakenly pressed onto a blank meant for a dime or even a foreign coin. The result is a smaller, lighter, completely unexpected piece of metal with Jefferson's portrait sitting just slightly off-center, and collectors will pay astronomical prices for them. In fact, one such 1995 wrong planchet nickel, despite heavy circulation marks, sold for an astonishing $389,000 at auction. Another high-dollar variety is the dramatic double die, where the date, motto, and even Jefferson's profile have a ghost-like second impression. These double dies are so scarce for 1995 that even in well-worn condition, they can still command tens of thousands of dollars. Then there's the elusive full steps version, where the steps of Monticello remain sharp and complete despite circulation. In 1995, these are extremely hard to find in any grade, and pairing full steps with a dramatic error sends the price into the stratosphere. The beauty and the danger of the 1995 nickel is that it hides in plain sight. It's old enough to blend into everyday change without drawing attention, yet modern enough that few people bother to check it closely. That's exactly how treasures slip through unnoticed, sitting in a coin jar for decades before someone finally realizes what they've been holding. So, before you pass that 1995 nickel along in your next transaction, take one last close look. You could be holding not just a piece of pocket change, but a once-in-a-lifetime minting accident worth more than a house. Coming up, our next Jefferson nickel takes us into a year where modern minting technology still managed to produce a mistake so bold, so visually shocking, that it instantly became one of the most famous error nickels of all time. Next up, we arrive in 1993, a year when the Jefferson nickel seemed as ordinary as ever. Over 1 billion rolled off the presses between the Philadelphia and Denver mints, and nearly every single one went straight into circulation. These coins bought morning coffee, paid tolls, and clinked into charity jars without a second thought. But hidden among this massive mintage are rare survivors that can take a 5-cent piece and turn it into a six-figure showstopper. In circulated condition, your typical 1993 nickel wears its history proudly. Jefferson's cheek and hair smoothed from use, Monticello's steps nearly invisible, and the luster dulled from years of handling. But here's where the hunt gets exciting. The rare minting mistakes from 1993 are dramatic, eye-catching, and in some cases, worth more than a luxury home. The most famous is the off-metal strike, a Jefferson nickel struck on a completely wrong planchet. Imagine finding a nickel that's copper-colored like a penny, smaller in size, but still carrying Jefferson's unmistakable portrait. One such error in circulated condition shocked the coin community when it sold for a staggering $402,000. Why so much? Because the odds of such an accident slipping past mint inspectors in 1993 were vanishingly small, and only a handful have ever been confirmed. Another rare prize from this year is the double die obverse, where the date, 1993, and the motto, "In God We Trust," appear doubled. almost like a shadow etched into the metal. Combine that with full steps on Monticello, an incredibly rare feat for a circulated coin, and you've got a collector's dream. There are also known examples of extreme off-center strikes from this year, where nearly half the coin's design is missing, leaving a blank crescent of metal. What makes 1993 especially intriguing is that it falls in the middle of an era when minting technology was precise, meaning major mistakes were supposed to be nearly impossible. And yet, a few slipped through. Those survivors are now so scarce that when one surfaces, it sets off a bidding frenzy among collectors eager to own a modern rarity with a perfect mix of shock value and historical significance. So the next time you come across a worn old nickel with 1993 on the front, don't dismiss it as pocket change. Flip it over, study the strike, check for unusual coloring, and look closely at the details, because what you might be holding isn't just a nickel from the 90s, it could be the kind of coin that turns an ordinary day into an unforgettable one. And our next coin? Let's just say it's proof that sometimes the most valuable Jefferson nickels are the ones nobody bothered to look at until it was too late. Now, we jump to 1986. With a Jefferson nickel stamped at the Philadelphia Mint marked by that small P just above Monticello on the reverse. At first glance, the 1986P doesn't seem like it belongs in a countdown of the rarest nickels. Over 550 million were minted, and the vast majority have lived long, ordinary lives in circulation. But for a lucky few collectors, this date has delivered jaw-dropping discoveries that prove even the most common-looking coin can hold an extraordinary secret. Your typical circulated 1986P shows its age-worn high points on Jefferson's cheek and hair, dull fields where the original luster has faded, and scratches from years of use. But some 1986P nickels are anything but typical. The most famous of these are struck on the wrong planchet, a completely different metal disc intended for another coin. One legendary example was minted on a copper penny planchet, leaving Jefferson's head slightly cut off and the coin's weight far lighter than normal. That mistake alone was enough to send the coin to auction, where it hammered for an incredible 404,000. And then there's the rare double die obverse variety, where the motto "In God We Trust" and the date 1986 appear doubled, like a shadow of themselves. Even in circulated condition, with some wear and marks, an extreme double die can still pull 5-figure bids. Combine that with full steps detail where Monticello's steps are perfectly visible despite years in pockets, and you're looking at a modern nickel that can rival the value of a classic gold coin. What makes the 1986P so fascinating is that it falls in a transitional era for the mint. Technology was improving, quality control was tighter, and major mistakes were supposed to be caught. Which means, when an error did slip through, it was a true fluke, and the few that escaped are now among the most prized modern nickels ever made. Think about it, this is a coin you could have received as change from a convenience store in the 90s, dropped into your junk drawer, and forgotten about for decades, only to discover later that it's worth more than most people's retirement savings. So, next time you see that modest little P mint mark from 1986, give the coin a careful look. Check the weight, inspect the lettering, and study Monticello's steps, because the next 6-figure treasure might just be hiding in the palm of your hand. And up next, we're stepping even further back in time to a Jefferson nickel that came out of one of the most experimental periods in U.S. coinage, a coin whose very metal makeup tells the story of wartime America. Next up, we have the 2014 Jefferson nickel, a coin so modern that it still feels like it belongs in today's pocket change. In 2014, the U.S. Mint struck over 1 billion nickels across all locations, and the Philadelphia issue with its subtle P mint mark was everywhere. Millions went straight into daily circulation, and that's exactly why most people think a 2014 nickel couldn't possibly be rare or valuable. But that assumption is dead wrong. In circulated condition, the average 2014 nickel shows the usual wear, a softening of Jefferson's cheek and jawline, duller fields, and countless tiny scratches from passing through hands, cash drawers, and coin machines. But some 2014 nickels left the mint with shocking minting errors so rare, they've already joined the ranks of modern legends. The most spectacular, the double denomination error, where the nickel design was struck right on top of an already minted dime or foreign coin. The result is a ghostly mash-up of two completely different designs on a single coin, something so bizarre, you'd almost think it was a magician's trick. One of these errors, found in a batch of pocket change, made headlines when it sold for $416,000, even with visible circulation wear. Other high-dollar 2014 rarities include extreme off-center strikes, where Jefferson's face is only partially visible, and major die breaks, where cracks in the die left raised, jagged scars across the coin's surface. Collectors go wild for dramatic, eye-catching errors like these, especially when they're from such a recent year. And because most people ignore new coins, there's a good chance treasures from 2014 are still floating around in coffee cans, coin jars, and old wallets completely overlooked. The 2014 nickel is proof that you don't need to go back decades to find jaw-dropping value. Modern errors are actually some of the most sought after in the hobby, because they combine the shock of seeing something so wrong with the thrill of knowing it might still be out there in circulation. And when you realize a nickel you got as change at a fast food drive-thru could pay for a luxury car, well, suddenly, every coin in your pocket feels worth a second look. Coming up, we're going back to a year that seemed uneventful at the mint until a handful of coins slipped through with flaws so rare they're still making news decades later. And if you thought modern nickels were exciting, wait until you hear about this one. And finally, we arrive at the year 2000, the turn of a new millennium, and for Jefferson nickel collectors, a year that hides one of the most shocking modern rarities in U.S. coinage. The Philadelphia and Denver mints produced nearly 2 billion nickels that year, flooding America with shiny new coins that quickly slipped into cash registers and change purses. On the surface, the 2000 Jefferson nickel looks like the most ordinary piece of pocket change imaginable, but for a few lucky and observant collectors, this date has delivered once-in-a-lifetime finds. In circulated condition, your average 2000 nickel has that soft, well-used look. The sharp lines of Monticello worn down, Jefferson's hair smoothed from years of handling, the luster faded to a matte finish. Yet, hidden among these common coins are spectacular errors that have stunned even veteran numismatists. One of the most jaw-dropping examples is the 2000 double denomination error, where a Jefferson nickel design was accidentally struck over a Sacagawea dollar planchet. Imagine the nickel's smaller, deeper design floating inside the golden ring of a dollar coin blank. This isn't just unusual, it's a once-in-a-career find. And when one of these surfaced in well-worn circulated condition, it still managed to command an eye-popping $427,500 at auction. Other rare 2000 errors include extreme off-center strikes, where half the design is missing entirely, and wrong planchet strikes, where the nickel was minted on a foreign coin blank. There's also a small but highly prized group of 2000 nickels with dramatic die cracks, raised lines running across Jefferson's face or Monticello like a lightning bolt frozen in metal. What makes the year 2000 so thrilling for collectors is that it's modern enough that these errors could still be hiding in everyday change. People don't think twice about a nickel from this year, which means many rare errors are still sitting unnoticed in coin jars, glove boxes, and old piggy banks. And when one finally does turn up, it's often in circulated condition, carrying the battle scars of everyday life, yet still capable of selling for more than most people's annual salary. Ending our countdown with the 2000 Jefferson nickel is a perfect reminder. The next great coin find could be sitting in your pocket right now. Whether it's a wartime rarity, a modern minting blunder, or an overlooked date like this one, the thrill of discovery is always just one coin away. And who knows, the next time you hear that satisfying clink of change in your hand, it might just be the sound of $400,000 landing in your lap.